Alright, people, review of the week time. So, a lot to get into, a lot to talk about, a lot coming up this week as well, actually, with regards to the fights that we have on Sky Sports this weekend, which is Dan Aziz, Joshua Buatsi. Fingers crossed we get to this fight now, because it was fight week last time round. They pulled it, or they rescheduled it, I should say. We say we're looking forward to it, but God only knows. Fingers crossed we get to it this week. We might talk a bit about that later. Let's talk about the fight cards that happened last night. There was obviously two cards. There was one up in Belfast in the Ulster Hall. I haven't seen a fight card up in the Ulster Hall in a while, actually. That was certainly televised. I mean, when was the last time they did have one? They had one in late 2021, and actually Lewis Crooker was headlining that as well. The Ulster Hall is kind of like, it's a bit like, I've never been in it myself, but it's reminiscent of the York Hall, where it seems as though no matter where you are in that building, you got to have a good seat. And the atmosphere looks absolutely incredible in it. It really does. But they had a show up there last night. Now, where do I start? Right, let's start with the main event, right, which was Lewis Crooker versus Jose Felix. Now, Jose Felix coming into this fight was coming off the back of a win over Gary Cully. Now, both guys for that fight respectively weighed 137.5 pounds. Gary Cully normally campaigns at lightweight. This guy here, he's kind of a bit in the middle. So he probably could campaign at lightweight. I know he weighed 135.5 pounds when he fought Tyrone McKenna. So Jose Felix, we're saying this is really a lightweight / 140 pounder. Realistically, he was 146 pounds in this fight. Crooker came in at 150. So yeah, over the welterweight limit. Look, I'm struggling here. What do you gain from knocking out a guy who really is a career lightweight, or certainly would be best fitted to the lightweight division when you're coming in over the welterweight limit? I'm a bit lost as to how. I wouldn't really be looking at that and thinking that's a good thing. Yeah, it was a nice little knockout, but you're essentially two weight divisions heavier than the guy. I know Jose Felix coming into this fight was coming off the back of a win over Gary Cully, but Gary Cully isn't much. Maybe not in terms of height. Gary Cully's very tall. He's 6'2", but all in all, a much smaller man than Lewis Crooker. So yeah, it's a win over Jose Felix, but like realistically, you beat a guy who really campaigns two weight divisions lower than you, and you're 150 pounds. Are you even a 147 fighter, or are you closer to 154? The talk is that Crooker could be taking on Paddy Donovan, who also fought in this card. Now, as many of you will know, I've watched Paddy Donovan since he turned pro. In fact, I actually saw his professional debut. I think I even reviewed his pro debut on here many years ago now. I think it was 2019. I've always been impressed by Donovan. He's got very good shot selection, very fast hands, really good speed in general, and decent punching power. I remember early on in Donovan's career, he seemed so fixated on getting knockouts and impressing that he actually, he overdid things. He forced things. He tried so hard to look impressive that he ended up not looking impressive, and not necessarily making the fights harder, but not really doing himself any favours in the fights by making the fights that little bit harder and him just looking a little bit ragged at times. He's solved all that, and he's been looking very good over the last couple of fights. Been really impressed with what I've been seeing now with Paddy Donovan. Got a win last night, and if he did fight Lewis Crooker next, I'd be leaning towards Paddy Donovan. I would. I'd edge him just slightly in that fight. I think it's very good. We would have Belfast against Limerick. So that would be an all-Irish affair. Would they do it in Belfast? Would they do it in Dublin? One thing I like is Eddie Hearn is bringing boxing to Ireland now. And we're seeing more fights, up north and down south as well. So, yeah, look, if they do that fight, if Eddie Hearn wants to bring a card to Dublin, neutral territory for both guys, then there you go. I also saw Siobhan Clark beat Tommy McCarthy. He actually done it quicker than Seslak did. Yeah, look, good performance by Siobhan Clark, but Tommy McCarthy, he really is. I mean, I would say that loss against Billum Smith on Fight Camp a couple of years ago, where he lost a split decision to Billum Smith, that was the last time McCarthy really had anything left. Because in the rematch, it was an easy win for Billum Smith. Stopped him in 8 rounds. And he really did look a shell of himself. And then he fought a guy in 2022 called Reynes. I can't even pronounce that guy's last name, but that was televised on terrestrial TV here in Ireland. This guy came in with a record 20-18, a journeyman. And McCarthy, not only could he not put a dent in him, he ended up losing rounds in that fight. Like I said, we were able to watch it on terrestrial TV here, and he looked shocking in it. So I kind of felt that that was his last real performance where he had something left in the tank. Whereas now, it just seems like everything is gone with McCarthy. And it's sad in a way because McCarthy always had talent. The thing about him, he was a decent amateur. He always had talent there, but he could just never put it all together. And he always had shaky punch resistance. He always had that. And I think now it's a case of, you've been knocked out a bunch of times. You seem to have regressed even more so in the chin department, which was never that good to begin with. And yeah, you're getting hurt more now in fights, and you're struggling, even in fights you're winning, with guys who realistically you shouldn't even be, not much less losing rounds, even going 8 rounds with them. You should be getting rid of them in a couple of rounds. So yeah, McCarthy, he's good friends with Tyrone McKenna, who's recently bowed out. I would imagine McCarthy is going to do the same. I would imagine. We go over to the States. Now, I have to admit, I've only seen one fight on this card, which was obviously the Jaime Munguia John Ryder fight. I didn't get a chance to look at the rest of them. That was mainly the fight that I was interested in, the Jaime Munguia John Ryder fight. It was, as I said, it was competitive to an extent, but Munguia was the guy in control. It wasn't, Ryder wasn't out of his depth in there by any stretch, but Munguia, a career best performance in my opinion. He was just the better of the two. And one judge gave every round to Munguia. That's a bit harsh. You could give John Ryder a couple of rounds in there, certainly. But Munguia was in control throughout. And ultimately, the stoppage in the 9th round was correct by the corner. I know the referee either he didn't see them or he just didn't acknowledge it, either or. They had to ring the bell early, just because obviously the stoppage wasn't coming from the referee. So they eventually just did that. By that 9th round, John Ryder was hurt. He was hurt bad. And those 2 knockdowns he suffered earlier in the 2nd and the 4th round, he felt them, I'm sure, but I don't think he was necessarily badly hurt. He was in the 9th round. He was all over the place in that 9th round. So stop that fight before he takes damage. In terms of Munguia, look, I want to see, excuse me, I've had a bit of a dose the last few days. I want to see Canelo versus Benavidez. That's the fight I want to see. Benavidez is Canelo's mandatory. He should really be fighting him. And if Canelo does end up fighting Jaime Munguia, for me, the excuse of, I don't want to fight another Mexican, which is the excuse that we were hearing for Benavidez, well, that doesn't fly. Because if you're going to take on Munguia, well, then you could surely take on Benavidez next. Shouldn't be an issue. Now, if Canelo did take on Jaime Munguia, I'd rather see him fight Benavidez, but it is still a good fight. It's an intriguing fight. There's been talk of that fight for years now. Years and years and years. I would favour Canelo, certainly. I think that Munguia defensively makes too many mistakes. And even when offensively he's very good, but defensively there is mistakes there, especially when he looks to go and really go on the attack. He doesn't move his head at all. He will get countered to death by Canelo, who really does hit very hard at 168. And I think Munguia may struggle with that. He may struggle with that. At the end of the day, the fight I really want to see for Alvarez is Benavidez. That's the fight I want to see. And if they did do Benavidez versus Munguia next, 100% I'd be picking Benavidez. I would. I think Benavidez is tremendously talented. I would favour Canelo over Benavidez still. But I want to see that fight to see how it unfolds. Because I favour Canelo doesn't mean that he's going to win. And that really for Alvarez, if he's staying at 168, that's the fight I want to see. I want to see Canelo versus Benavidez. Yeah, Munguia is a good consolation, but Benavidez is that guy at 168. And I love the talk he's been talking over the last couple of months where he's been saying basically, if Canelo fights, say, Charlo next, I want to fight like Munguia, or I want to fight someone, just so Canelo can't turn around and say, right, well, I'm going to fight him next. Benavidez is looking for that fight, and the longer they leave it, the more I would favour Canelo, because Benavidez is a big boy at 160. He is Munguia. I don't know how he was making 154. Again, I don't know how Benavidez is making 168. He's massive, and he's still quite young. So the longer you leave it, the harder it's going to be. The more he's just going to grow and fill out, and the harder it's going to be for him to make the weight. That when he does finally fight Canelo, will he have that stamina? Will he be able to keep a high work rate because of the weight cut? Your guess is as good as mine there. Now, Eddie Hearn has publicly urged Ryan Garcia to now return to negotiations to fight Devin Haney next, and he said that he hopes that the fight could get made this week, I should say, for Haney to defend that title in Las Vegas on April the 20th. Yeah, it's been to say the least, it's been a bad week for Ryan Garcia. It's been frustrating, really, the Ryan Garcia situation, that there was so much talk of him versus Devin Haney, and then he just decides to go away and say, Devin Haney didn't do so many pay-per-view buys, so he doesn't deserve to fight me. Alright, but Rolly's a bigger star, is he really? Easy world title win, yeah, I get it, but to even insinuate that Rolly's a bigger name, and Rolly looks like he's going to fight Pitbull, which, Pitbull is going to be a world champion. And that is the first PBC show. I'll talk about that now in a wee sec. But look, I like Ryan Garcia. I think he's a very talented fighter. But he has that diva-ish attitude where he just acts as though, he is the guy. He doesn't have no titles, right? He is the guy who's going to be going in there as the challenger, right? And he thinks that he can just be like, this guy's not good enough for you. Coming up, well, no, sorry, you did win your last fight, but your only real kind of step into world level, you were beaten comprehensively by Tank Davis. So, you've got a lot to prove. And I'd like to see him against Devin Haney. I'd be making Devin Haney favourite. I think Haney would outbox him, but prove me wrong. He could prove me wrong. If he goes in there and beats Devin Haney, hold my hands up, say, geez, you surprised me. In terms of Rolly, he is reportedly going to be fighting Isaac Cruz. This is going to be PBC's first show with Amazon Prime. Yeah. I don't know if I like the main event. In fact, I'll actually see, do they have it on BoxRec, so I can maybe see, is there anything else to go with it? Yeah, it's on BoxRec now, actually. T-Mobile Arena. This is an interesting one. So it's not a terrible card, but pay-per-view worthy, I don't think so. So Sebastian Fondora versus, I'm not even going to try and say that guy's name, for the vacant WBC 154-pound title. Fondora is coming off the... How does Fondora get this fight? He's coming off the back of a loss. Okay. How he got that fight is beyond me, coming off the back of a loss, but the WBC and PBC, they seem to have a very, very, very friendly relationship. That sanctioned body in PBC. Don't know how Fondora gets that fight coming off a loss. A lot of sanctioned bodies wouldn't even let you fight a champion if you have a loss on your record. I know the WBO are very strict on that if you're caught on the back of a loss, you're not fighting the champion. So, yeah, I don't know how that happened, but I've never rated Fondora, as many of you will know. I still don't rate him, to be honest with you. He is just a very big guy for the weight. That's it. And I wouldn't mind, but he's someone who's so tall for that weight. He gives up his height. He doesn't fight like someone who that tall should fight. So Fondora, yeah, we'll see how that goes. Erislandy Lara versus Michael Zarafa. I mean, that's just the kind of alright. Michael Zarafa versus Lara. Lara will probably just outbox him. I mean, Lara is how old now? How old is he? Doesn't have his age listed on BoxRec, but he's got to be in his 40s now. Is Erislandy Lara. They were meant to be having him versus Danny Garcia at one point. Yeah, Michael Zarafa is more suited to the 160 pound, I would say. He gives a not bad account of himself at times. The win over Jeff Horn that he got back in 2019, it made the Kell Brook performance age a lot better. And has he lost? He hasn't lost since he fought Jeff Horn in that rematch in 2019. So, yeah, let's see how he does. Rolly versus Pitbull. Yeah, Pitbull's going to win that fight pretty easy. Rolly is just not good enough. Rolly is the worst champion in boxing. I've said it once, I'll say it again. And then Tim Tszyu versus Keith Thurman. It's a strange one, that one, for me, because I like Keith Thurman, as many of you will know. I've always said that. I like Keith Thurman, especially when he was in his kind of quote-unquote prime about a decade ago. I love watching Keith Thurman. I thought he was going to do great things at welterweight. I really did. And you could say he's done a lot of good things. I mean, he unified the division. But after that unification with Garcia, it's inactivity, injuries, no motivation. I couldn't believe Manny Pacquiao beat Keith Thurman. I couldn't believe it. I really still, even now, it's kind of like, how did Pacquiao win that fight? We know Pacquiao was a legend, he's a great fighter, but I just couldn't believe it at the time. And then he misses 2 and a bit years of action. God almighty, Barros, he fights 2 years ago, and now he's fighting at 155, not even for a title, against Tim Tszyu. I don't know. I'd be making Tim Tszyu firm favourite. I'd be surprised if Thurman has much left. It's either going to be a late stoppage for Tim Tszyu or a very wide points decision for Tim Tszyu. I can't see it going any other way. I really can't. I'm just... Keith Thurman, yeah, he's a frustrating fighter because I like Keith Thurman. Always like watching him. Always rated him highly. Certainly when he was in his prime. But god damn, it's been frustrating watching him over the last few years. Eddie Hearn has said that if the Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall rematch is interesting, gets made, it likely won't be on DAZN. With the money they want, it needs to be pay-per-view in the UK. I don't feel like DAZN think it's pay-per-view. You and me both, Eddie. But another broadcaster might. I don't think it'll land on DAZN. I don't think a broadcaster is going to pick that up. I don't think BT or TNT or Sky will pick that fight up. You know, yes, Josh Taylor is looking for an awful lot of money and he's no longer a champion, but I guess he feels he's owed more than the fight's worth, essentially. That's what he feels. And Eddie Hearn obviously knows damn well putting that fight on pay-per-view. You know, if they'd have done that fight in 2022, say 9 months after the rematch, after the first fight, you could have done that on pay-per-view. It wouldn't have broke records or anything like that, but it might have done somewhat okay because the interest was there. People still remembered it. As I've said several times, the world's moved on. It's been 2 years. Just move on. You know, as I said several times, and I don't mean this, I do not mean this in a disrespectful way to Jack Catterall at all, right? But mate, if that is your whole selling point, I got robbed against Josh Taylor 2 years ago. If that's all you can go on, you've got Eddie Hearn as your promoter and Sam Jones managing you, two of the best talkers in boxing who could sell a car that's on fire to someone and they think it's okay. If that's all they can really use to try and sell you to the public, something's amiss. You need to do something. F Josh Taylor. You don't like him. I get that. Go and do something else. You know, they always say the best revenge is massive success. If you can't get the rematch, go and try and win a world title. You know, go and say, look, I didn't need you. I have my moment anyway. That's what I'd be saying to Jack Catterall. I really would. I just think that fight, it had a finite window where if it was made, it would have done something. It had a finite window. And it's not just gone past that, it's long since gone past that. To the point now, when you see interviews with Jack Catterall, more people are just kind of saying, look, not interested, don't care, do something else. And again, I'm not having a go with Jack Catterall as a person or anything like that. I'm saying it in a sense of, yeah, just that's what the people are saying. Just move on. Do something different, you know? Do something different. Try and win a world title. I know it's not easy at 140 because, you know, Rowley is the easiest champion, but he's fighting Pitbull, and that's a tough fight in of itself for someone like a Jack Catterall. And you know, you've Mateus, you've Haney, you've Lopez. It's not easy at 140 to win a world title. You need to be elite. Is Jack Catterall elite? I don't think so personally, but I'm there to be proven wrong. In terms of other fights that are we're waiting on announcements for, but we're getting there. We have Dmitry Bivol versus versus Artur Beterbiev, undisputed light heavyweight, June the 1st. Lads, that is going to be flippin' epic. I honestly can't wait for that fight. I think it's going to be, as I said, tremendous. For me, it's great that we're finally getting it. And I'm hoping that we're getting it at a time where we still have somewhat of a peak Beterbiev. I know he's not going to be in his athletic peak. Of course not at 39. But I don't think he's fallen off the ladder enough for it to be just one-sided. Having said that, I would make Bivol favourite. But I'm just happy that we're going to get that fight. I have seen Sullivan kind of say, oh, well, we don't. No. You're sanctioning the fight. Because you should never be in this situation anyway. That fight is going to be sanctioned. And Sullivan is the sort of guy where he'd be like, oh, well, I don't think we will. There's a bag of money. I will sanction it. Happy days. That's Sullivan for you. You know, but I think we're getting this fight. Well, we're definitely going to get it. But I'm sure it's going to be for undisputed. I definitely will. Let's go and have a look-see on box. Actually, before we get on the boxing scene, right? Obviously, this week there was the leak, quote unquote, of the Fury versus Usyk gloves are off, and it's an interesting one. It was an interesting watch for the 12 minutes it was there. It's going to be interesting to see when the full unedited version is released, because that's going to kind of tell us a little bit more. The few things I pick up from that, from what I've seen, Fury look, I don't know when it was recorded, because a lot of the times they'll record them well ahead of schedule. Like, I mean well ahead. I'll give you an example. When Edwards and Rodriguez, they recorded their face-off, that was the end of September. That was on a Tuesday in the end of September. In London they recorded it. They didn't release it until December. So they record them well in advance, right? Nearly 3 months later is when it's released. So I would say that might have been kind of round about Christmas time, because Fury looked to have trimmed down a little bit, which is obviously a good indication. It shows that he's straight back into camp, and of course he was going to take this fight serious, but we know now, or you can gauge that he is, just judging by how he looked in that face-off. The thing about that face-off I didn't like, it wasn't even the face-off, it was when they brought up Joshua. Fury was saying, oh, when I beat Usyk, I won't need to fight him because he beat Joshua twice. Oh my good lord. I can't stand it when fighters say that. He's absolutely spot on when he says Usyk beat Joshua twice. He did. Fury hasn't. And there's no way of knowing if he'd do the same unless they fight. You know, I don't understand the way these fans are. They're just like, oh, he beats everyone, so he shouldn't need to fight them. But you don't know that. You don't have a crystal ball that you can look into and say, oh yeah, he did. The only way to find out is for him to fight them. And for him to say, oh, well, I don't need to fight Joshua if I beat Usyk because Usyk's already beat him. Well, yeah, that's on Usyk's resume, not on yours. You need to fight him. And I would assume that was filmed before the day of reckoning, meaning that Turki Al Sheikh, who's saying now that the winner of Joshua, or the winner of Fury Usyk, is going to fight the winner of Joshua Ngannou, I would imagine that was said before that. Might be a different story now. I've actually been looking as well at some of Fury's sparring partners, and I'm going to do a separate video on that, because I actually think that he, in my opinion anyway, has the better sparring partners. Even if you take Jay Opetaia out of the equation, I was looking at some of his, and I was like, he's got some good sparring partners in there. But just having the better sparring partners, that doesn't really necessarily mean anything. Let's have a look-see at boxing scene now. Josh Taylor. I won't overlook Catterall this time. That was my mistake in the first fight. Alright, so Josh Taylor kind of hinting that maybe the fight will happen. Listen, if it's at 140, I'd make Catterall favourite. If it's at a kind of 145 catch weight, or just the full 147, yeah, I'd take Josh Taylor to win the fight. I would. I think myself and several others, we all thought it would be easier than it was. And I guess Josh Taylor obviously took the fight a little bit, it's going to be easy. Normally rematches, the winner of the first fight tends to win the second fight. Normally anyway. Matchroom CEO Keenan Crooker versus Donovan. I think now is a great time to do that fight. So do I. Even if both guys, obviously both guys aren't going to lose, but even if one guy loses, they're still quite early on in their pro careers. It's not going to hinder them that much. It really won't. What else do we have here? Froch. Andre Ward wouldn't have a effing chance with Joshua. I'd enjoy AJ knocking him out. You certainly would, Mr. Froch. Carl Froch is so bitter when it comes to Andre Ward. I remember when Andre Ward retired, Sky Sports got Carl Froch on, and all he talked about was Andre Ward's boring, he's this. And then at the very end, he had to just emphasize the fact that, but I'm not bitter. He beat me, but I'm not bitter. It's like, yes, you definitely are bitter. You 100% are bitter. I do agree that Anthony Joshua would knock Andre Ward out. I think Andre Ward is way too small for heavyweight. Way too small. Very talented fighter, Andre Ward. And I was a big fan of Andre Ward, but yeah, way too small for heavyweight. I agree with him there. But yeah, with Carl Froch, that's one thing I like about him, is that Froch just doesn't care. He's one of those few guys in boxing media where if he just has an opinion, he just says it. He doesn't give a crap. And I like that, because so often you see people and you're like, do you really believe that? Do you really believe what you're saying? Kell Brook reflects on the long rivalry with Amir Khan. Yeah. The rivalry ended when Kell Brook stopped the Mir Khan. I mean, that was one-sided as anything, that fight. It really was. I hope to God Kell Brook leaves it at that and he doesn't come back, but there's always that worry that Eubank Jr. fight is there. I don't like that fight either. I just think that fight, 2 years out of the ring, nah, man. Nah. Zhang's trainer, we're not underestimating Parker. Wilder totally looked past Parker. I agree. I think he did. I absolutely think he did. I think that Wilder was just thinking, and you could tell by the way he was talking. He was just talking about Joshua. It's like, mate, Parker is game. He's there. You got to get rid of him first. So, yeah, I think Zhang Parker is going to be brilliant. I really do. I really, truly do. Good Lord. Wait to hear this. Wait for this. Tevin Farmer willing to move up 2 weight divisions to fight Ryan Garcia. I'm sure you are. No, just no on that one. Matty Harris with new trainer Peter Fury to return on March the 1st. Yeah, in Telford. Yeah, I seen that. That Matty Harris is with Peter Fury now. That was a bad loss for Matty Harris last time around against that guy. Is it Dobashenko is how you say the guy's name. The guy Moses Atelma. Moses Atelma went the distance with him and won every round. I think that was the fight where he hurt his hand. And yeah, Matty Harris, that was not a good look. No, that was really not a good look. Really, really not a good look. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So, lads and lasses, I will leave it there. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you could, as always, smash the like button. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. For now, lads and lassies, I will leave you with that. As always, I hope you all have a great week. I hope this tickle in my throat or kind of little dose. I had a little dose over the weekend. I don't know where it came from. It's just like kind of tickling the throat and just kind of a chesty cough. It's near gone. Hopefully it's gone in the next few days. And yeah, everyone else has a good week. I hope, as I always say, something good happens to someone this week, myself included. You never know. And from now, I will just leave you with that. Obviously, thank you once again for dropping by the channel. Nearly at 16k. We're getting there. We're not far off 16k. We're less than 250 off 16k. So we get to that. 20k is only around the corner, lads. I'll leave it there. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again for dropping by. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, all that good stuff. Peace.